Welcome. I'm Mark Molnár from Budapest. Today, I would like to share with you some of my experiences from real life related on stakeholders in healthcare. First, I would like to show the value of taking a structured approach to stakeholder management and the importance of stakeholder mapping and profiling. Second, we will discuss several issues you'll meet when dealing with specific stakeholder groups. Stakeholders are persons or groups that may affect or be affected by your organization's objectives and actions. As a patient advocate, you get in touch with several different stakeholders. Main stakeholder groups are the patients that you represent, policymakers and payers, medical professionals, companies from the pharmaceutical, biotechnological, or other related industries, or patient advocacy and interest groups, and the media. Maybe you can name other relevant stakeholders as well. As an example, in the healthcare environment, these stakeholders work and interact along quite complex processes, which are not necessarily linear, well-structured, and fully transparent. As a patient representative, you should do your best to get familiar with processes in your respective country and go for a structured approach that will help you plan effective management strategies towards stakeholders. In order to get most results out of advocacy activities, patient advocates need to answer 3 important questions. First, you need to know whom you want to influence. This means that you need to understand the roles, responsibilities, and importance of each organization participating in decision-making, and you need to know the key stakeholders within these organizations. Second, you need to know when to take actions. For this, you need to understand decision-making process to be able to act in time. Third, you need to know how to make impact. For this, you need to adjust your communication strategy according to the profiles and priorities of the stakeholders. A structured approach will help you answer these questions and plan effective management strategies towards stakeholders. Why would you want to manage stakeholders? Because you want them to support your cause, and effective stakeholder management enables you to build trust among supporters and actively engage them in your activities. Also, it helps you minimize resistance or harm caused by non-supporters. This process starts with stakeholder mapping or stakeholder analysis. First of all, you need to identify all relevant stakeholders. The second step is to get to know your stakeholders. You need to understand their needs, expectations, and objections to be able to develop strategies and formulate appropriate messages for them. We call this step profiling. The third step is to formulate messages based on stakeholder profiles. I will come back to this later. Now it is enough to point out that you need tailored strategies in each stakeholder group to manage stakeholders' expectations and objections. The fourth and the final step aims at engaging stakeholders, which means involving them in your actions and decision-making and activating their potentials in favor of your cause. Also, this includes understanding and managing their objections. Let's have a closer look at stakeholder mapping. Stakeholder mapping aims at identifying and describing all relevant stakeholders related to your specific problem. Preparing a stakeholder map helps you answer critical questions like, who can I partner with, or who should I be concerned about? So you will know which groups require most of your attention because of their high challenge or support potential. It's important to note that such maps are just snapshots. The landscape may change over time as stakeholders may shift positions, move around, or new stakeholders might turn up. Usually, the output of mapping is a matrix depicting all the stakeholders by the most relevant dimensions, like how active and how supportive they are. You can see an example in this slide. Of course, there are other dimensions you can use. Some of the most commonly used dimensions are power or influence, interest or availability, need, potential of threat, and so on. Choose the ones that are most relevant for you. Let's have a closer look at our example. As said, we have two main dimensions here, and our map has been divided into 6 segments based on how active and how supportive stakeholders are. In this grid, the size of the circle illustrates the influence of the stakeholder. So you can actually depict 3 dimensions in a map like this. Arrows provide some additional info. They represent interpersonal relationships and influence among stakeholders. Let's assume here that all stakeholders are individuals. From this map, we can see, for example, that individual G represents a big challenge, as he's a stakeholder with negative attitudes to our problem, who may have an adverse impact on our project. Individual D should be enrolled for the cause, and stakeholder C should be mobilized. As said earlier, the next step is profiling, which means the assessment of the needs, motivations, attitudes, and decision drivers of your stakeholders. Profiling helps you understand how stakeholders relate to your problem, what are the main drivers of the key stakeholders, and how you can influence them. For example, a decision maker's attitude may be determined by political, bureaucratic, scientific, or financial logic. A person with a political attitude wants to maximize popularity, as he will be more likely to promote causes that are sellable, easy to understand, and widely supported. In contrast, a person with a scientific attitude wants evidence and may not be very much interested in political benefits or public opinion. You should communicate different arguments if you want to persuade both stakeholders to support your cause. To sum up, profiling helps you plan tailored and effective management and communication strategies. You may also identify potential risks and threats that you should handle. This leads us over to the question of effective communication strategies in various stakeholder groups. We will use the same grid as an example. Active but resistant stakeholders mean the biggest challenge for you. Ignoring them may result in unpleasant surprises, so you need to monitor them closely. Stakeholders who are resistant and passive need to be monitored as well, but with minimum effort only. For neutral stakeholders, try to build trust and transform neutrality into commitment. At least take steps to prevent them from moving to the resistant side. For this, you need to explain your motivation and goals to them, consult with them before decisions, ask for feedback, and so on. There may be stakeholders who sympathize with you, but do not want to get involved in your activities. Keep in touch with them and keep them informed. Active and supportive players are your key stakeholders. They should be your strategic partners. Focus your resources here. Keeping them satisfied is a top priority, as you want them to stay active and help you reach your goals. Involve them in your projects and in decision making. Moving on, let's look at the opportunities to influence policymakers or payers in more detail. As this slide shows, you have several strategies to choose from. Of course, you can use any combinations of these. First, you may want to influence decision makers through public pressure. In this case, you want to create awareness in the wider audience. You want people to know about your cause and form an alliance with you. Most probably, you need to obtain media coverage to achieve this. Next, you can directly contact policymakers to influence their agenda. For example, you can prepare a white paper about the therapy area that you are interested in or present it to the Minister of Health. Another strategy called negotiation aims at forming alliances with other stakeholders, so you can plan joint action to represent your interests and have a bigger impact. Finally, we need to mention an emerging strategy which aims at achieving goals, especially related to patient rights and accessing healthcare by launching lawsuits against responsible institutions. This judicialization strategy has been relatively successful, for example, in Latin America. It is not very much in line with the idea of partnership with decision makers, but it may be worth knowing that it exists. At this very point, it is important to emphasize that patient advocacy organizations function as a mediator between patients and decision makers. This means that patient advocates help articulate patients' interests, needs, and perspectives towards decision makers. They should understand the logic and thinking of policymakers and payers and formulate messages that can be the basis for further communication. Furthermore, patient advocates can educate patients about how policymakers think, so they gain a better understanding of decisions. I hope the knowledge I shared with you with these slides were useful for their everyday practice. Thank you for your attention.